Hello everyone and welcome to part 17 of What If Deku Had All for One. Let's jump straight into the video. The fire was dying, by now, but it still crackled every once in a while, as smoldering timbers from inside the wrecked bar seemed to wake up and pop every once in a while. They were almost the only sounds in the neighborhood by now, no more of the rabble of bystanders long since dispersed, no more piercing shrieks of the sirens from those who had arrived and been helpless to act, and barely a whisper in the background as a pair of soot-covered firefighters continued to douse water over a small offshoot of the main fire in the handbag shop next to the bar. Punctuation in the air, a crackling reminder of what had gone down a few minutes before. Not that they disturbed Katsuki Bakugo from his thoughts, as he stared vacantly at the gutted shell and the twinkling embers within. Not that he had even been that invested in what had gone down in the bar, even as he was involved. How could he be invested? After what Endeavor had told him that a few days ago, it was hard to think of anything else but the bigger picture, and those who lay in the shadows. The Meta-Liberation Army's existence had not been something which Katsuki had been ready to learn about. Endeavor had taken him aside, the day that he had been ambushed by the journalist from Shueisha Publishing and the day that she had gotten the rise out of him. Everything about what she had been asking him had set the hairs on the back of his neck on edge, how well she seemed to know his past, how happy she was to let him talk. He had bitten, because his temper had gotten the better of him to make the jump before considering where he was going to land, and her smirk at the end of it let him know that he had given her what she wanted. What she had wanted was the interview which went out on TV and subsequently went viral to the nation, the defiant raging against the dying of the light that was his rant about the failures of the Hero Commission. Good. He was fine with that, if more people started questioning the Commission's ability to handle everything, if it led to change that meant the heroes would stand up and actually try to follow in All Might's footsteps. He had announced himself to the world as someone who would fight the darkness in the system, in the dark corners, and he was fine with that infamy that attaches to it. It turned out that backlash, and the furtive whispers about the Commission from people angry at their failings, weren't what Endeavor was on edge about. It was what she was saying during the interview, what he had missed as he took the bait hook, line and sinker, that had shaken his sponsor and mentor. And only after the fact, when he and Vernon slid into a meeting room at the Endeavor agency, did Katsuki realize the weight of just how deep this ran, when he looked into Endeavor's eyes. Normally so full of fire and desire to take on any fight head-on, Endeavor looked, frustrated. The #1 hero, looking as if there was nothing he could do, that wasn't something Katsuki was used to. When there was an enemy out there in the shadows that had that effect on his mentor, Katsuki couldn't help but struggle himself. The more Endeavor had told him, and the more the normally unflappable Vernon grimaced at some of the details, the more Katsuki had been left uncomfortable in his chair. Sure, Aldera had taught him some of the history of their nation, before they stopped trying to encourage their students to become heroes, before Katsuki had been pulled out and taken under Endeavor's wing. He knew about Destro, the riots, the bombings on the Tokyo Metro and the attempted attack on Might Tower. He knew that All Might had fought Destro, their defiant leader, and after years of pursuit had got the great villain locked away into prison. That was common knowledge to everyone. What wasn't common knowledge was what had come after. He had thumbed through the pages of Meta-Liberation War, the book which Endeavor had slid across the table to him, and the more he read the more his stomach turned. The book was propaganda, the raging musings of a dying man furious that his acts of violence hadn't resulted in the changes he wanted for their nation, but, he now saw the warning signs he hadn't when he bit back at the reporter's questions. Her refusal to call it a quirk, the excited spouting about free use of his abilities. Now he could see what Endeavor meant when he said that the army was still alive. There were acolytes out there, hiding their agenda in the shadows, and trying to revive a movement that would tear apart their whole society to remake it in their own image. And he couldn't do a damn thing about them. Katsuki hated that he felt weak in the face of Endeavor's reveal, that this group were still out there trying to pull strings in dark places and trying to advance their cause. He hated that they kept themselves well hidden, that he and Endeavor couldn't confront them, blast whatever remained of the legacy of a terrorist to ash and be done. They were playing games which meant nobody had enough to target the ringleaders, and it seemed half the heroes didn't even know. If Endeavor was anything to go by, even the heroes that did know couldn't do a damn thing, and that pissed him off. He'd face any villain if he had to prove himself as the strongest hero there would ever be, but against a group like this, who kept themselves just out of reach, he was at a loss what to do. He wouldn't be beaten, though. As much as he had meant every word about the Hero Commission, Endeavor warned him that the whispers about meta liberation had been increasing since he ranted on air and poured fuel on their fire. That was his screw-up, for not knowing better, and he'd be damned if he let them use him to push their agenda. Katsuki Bakugo would not be the plaything of any villain, and he'd blast them all no matter how long it took him to find them. Still, it was hard not to let it weigh on his mind though whenever he was reminded of it. The case in point was today, he and Vernon had been sent out on patrol together by the old man, in response to reports of a trio making robberies around Mizurufu. Endeavor hadn't come with them, saying he needed to meet a member of the police who was on side for his long-running investigation into the army, a man Katsuki would apparently meet in the near future to bring him up to speed with Endeavor's suspects for the inner circle. Great, whoever this asshole was, if he was going to help them take on the army, Katsuki couldn't wait. But he couldn't help but be a little distracted now by the thought of the bigger threat over the horizon, even while he was on the job now. The brief had been fairly simple. As soon as a call came in that the robbers were targeting a bar and holding hostages, he and Vernon had answered to the call, the flames of her hair igniting in fury as they stormed into the bar to engage the robbers. The two goons inside had started the fire by dousing the wooden bar and tables with alcohol to set ablaze, but the damage had been done even after he had laid them out cold and dragged their sorry asses from the building. He could see reporters gathering at the police cordon, eager to pin the blame for the blaze on him and Endeavor's fiery sidekick. It's never fucking easy, Katsuki growled to himself, slouched against a dumpster across the street from the smoldering bar, wishing the press would just leave him alone for a day. It wasn't just them who had got him grinding his teeth together, though. Almost as soon as he hauled out the two unconscious criminals and cleared a hole in the side of the building with his explosion quirk, letting the people inside run free, a couple of Hero Commission heroes had descended on the scene. He didn't recognize them, minor lackeys from neighborhood patrols with nowhere near as much clout as Endeavor, but they told him to stay put, dared to order him around as if they had saved the day. The trio's leader had fled, and he wanted that scalp for himself, but instead the extras from the commission had him sat doing guard duty on the two morons because he was only someone's apprentice. As if he couldn't find some lowlife running away without their help. Not like you're even going anywhere, he muttered, kicking one of the prone criminals with a boot and feeling slightly disappointed when he didn't stir. The crook, some wannabe with a Mohican and ram's horns, had a violent purple bruise on his forehead from where Katsuki had smacked him with a table. Katsuki took some joy in knowing that he'd feel that for a while. We could be fighting real villains and I'm stuck here with you clowns. Hey, less of that, Sparky Boom Boy. Katsuki tried and failed not to react to the nickname, as Vernon came striding back from updating the police officers on the perimeter with a teasing look on her face. Don't fucking call me that, Bad Hair Day. The day you stop calling me Bad Hair Day is the day I stop giving you nicknames too, genius. She bonked him on the head with a fist, and slouched against the side of the dumpster with him before he could react. He could feel the waves of heat coming off her hair from so close. Seriously, I could feel you brooding from over there with the police. What are you, a DC protagonist? Katsuki glared at her. I get that you're older than me, but you're referencing stuff so old even Endeavor shouldn't know about it. And yet you get what I meant by the reference. Vernon retorted, and she smirked at him. I knew you were a hero nerd, deep down under all that teenage rage of yours. Katsuki huffed, but he couldn't deny it completely and so didn't even try. He wasn't on the level of that damn Deku, but he knew enough, and she had him pegged. Whatever. Shit, I don't know. It's just you're still thinking about what the old man said, aren't you? Katsuki looked up at her interruption and tried not to let his surprise show. Burnin was staring straight ahead, and the smirk was still on her face, but her eyes had glassed over a little, as if the smile hadn't quite made it there and something else was on her mind. Huh. Yeah, I am. Is that such a bad thing? Nah. It kinda hung heavy on my mind for a little while too, the first time the boss told me. The sound of cracking wood, a part of the roof of the burned-out bar collapsing, didn't do anything to distract Katsuki from the look on her face, the disquiet and the determination in equal measure. I hate it, kid. I hate the fact that there's someone out there pulling strings and making moves, and I hate the idea that we don't know who to trust to talk to them about it. Me too. Katsuki leaned forward, checking up and down the road to see if anyone was in earshot of them before putting his head back now before he said any more. Those bastards are out there and that's all I know. Not who it is, where they are, nothing. I'm stuck here trying to deal with extras like these two, and they just get to keep playing their game. Hey, trust me. I get it. I felt like that at the start too. Burnin had scrunched a hand into a fist as she talked. Don't get me wrong, I don't like every law we have at the moment. I thought the whole idea of quirk liberation didn't sound like a bad idea when I first heard it, but this isn't just about that. And that's why I don't like these guys too. They're taking an idea that should be good and turning it into their own twisted agenda, happy to make a mess of the country and sit on top of the ashes. But, we can't lose sight of the now, too. Heh. Big words coming from Endeavor's sidekick. Katsuki looked up at her with a challenging look on his face. You know as much as anyone how much of his career he spent trying to beat All Might, as if he could even come close. You're telling me he never lost track of the here and now — oh trust me, kid. He did. More than enough to pay for it for the rest of his life. Burnin's hair flared up for a second, and Katsuki took a step back due to the sudden increase of heat in his proximity. Her tone was angry, bordering on upset. Sorry, you know what happened to Shoto. Everyone knows what happened to his kid, running away and all, with the press putting the story out there for everyone to read. I liked the brat. I used to come over in my younger years at the agency and babysit him, and because of what the old man did, what he tried to push his son to do, he just left. And Endeavor is going to have to live with that for the rest of his damn life. You. Katsuki hesitated. I didn't realize — you don't even know half the damn picture. Burnin turned to look at him, and her eyes flickered with the light of her hair, emotions in there Katsuki didn't recognize. Endeavor's learned to live with the skeletons he made in his own closet, but you think we like living with the collateral damage? You think all of us sidekicks are happy at who we had to leave behind sometimes? I'd never leave, because the old man's given me more chances than anyone ever would have, taught me more than I'd learn in 100 years, and someone's got to try to clean up when he gets it wrong. Endeavor spends his whole life chasing something one way or another, whether it's All Might's top spot, or the ghosts in the Meta Liberation Army. Don't you dare go the same way, Katsuki. You're better than that. Katsuki really didn't know what to say in response to her honesty and her seriousness, the emotion that had come pouring out in one momentary rant. Ha! Tell me one thing, Katsuki, you damn hero nerd. Her tone was mocking, but the look in her eyes wasn't. Why was All Might always the #1 hero, ahead of Endeavor? Because All Might never stopped trying to help people, he said automatically, as if it was the easiest answer in the world. It kind of was, to him. All Might never gave up on any fight or left anyone behind — you're damn right. She poked him in the chest. Don't you forget that when you say that want to become #1. Endeavor doesn't want you making the same mistakes as he did, and neither do I. You can let yourself get eaten up thinking about the Meta Liberation Army, or, you can think about the now. The bad guys you've beaten up, the people you've saved. One day that fight will come, but until then, let's focus on the good shit you can do, right? Not a bad plan. Somehow, her words had cut through the haze of frustration that his inability to act right now against the army had caused. He shook his head as if clearing his brain, and turned to her, frowning. Guess there's a lot more villains to deal with than just those guys, huh? So many more. She looked him up and down, as if sizing him up. Look, it's shit, I get it. You wanna smack them, I wanna smack them, Endeavor wants to burn every last trace of them out of society. But don't let the old man's chase for ghosts be the only thing that defines you two. He picked you up from a police station because when everyone else stood by, you moved without thinking of the consequences for yourself to try to take down a villain and save people. That's what makes you a good enough hero for him to want to train you, so until the day you can kick some Destro-worshipping ass, go kick some normal ass and show him why he was right to take you in, okay? He smirked at the end of that line. You know, you're not bad at pep talks and teaching, for a sidekick. She punched him in the shoulder, just hard enough to sting. Jackass. And you're not bad at listening, for some teenage hardhead. But seriously, good job today. I didn't have to do much, considering you kinda handled these guys on their own. Damn right. They didn't stand a chance, Katsuki crowed, proud of himself as he kicked one of the unconscious criminals with his boot again. Hey, Vernon. Yeah huh. He cleared his throat. Look, I'm not good at saying this, so don't fucking make me repeat myself, but, thanks for the talk. You kinda helped me realize there's a lot more to it than just some extras who believe every word in a shitty book with a shit title. And for what it's worth, whatever you've had to go through with the old man, you'd be a good hero on your own. For a moment she paused, and the look of happiness in her eyes helped Katsuki realize that she had genuinely appreciated what he said. Well, damn. Thanks, kid. She raised an eyebrow then, framed under her flaming hair, and smirked. Guess you can actually express normal human gratitude, huh? First time for everything. Last time too if you carry on like that, he huffed, looking away from her down the street. Ha. No, seriously, thanks. Means a lot. Ground zero. He stiffened at the sound of those two words, and turned to her. How the hell do you know about that? Ha. You think the old man is good at keeping any secrets? Vernon laughed, placing one hand on her hip. You might have given him your paperwork to register your hero name, but he's #1 hero. He's never gonna have time to do that stuff for himself. First rule of an agency like ours, if Endeavor doesn't want to do it, he gives it to a sidekick. In this case, me. I told him I didn't want anyone to know until it had been signed off, Katsuki snarled, kicking a trash bag. God damn it. Hey, don't be sour your whole life. I like it. Vernon replied, shaking her head in amusement as he took out his brief frustration on the rubbish around him. But for real, you wanna talk me through that? It's not the sort of name I'd have picked for you oh yeah. What would you have picked? I dunno, you're short and angry and love an explosion, so, Megumin. I'll fucking end you here and now. I'd like to see you try. Vernon smirked again. For real though, you're kind of an All Might fanboy, so I thought that might feature. Maybe combining that and your love of explosions, I would have guessed something like dynamite. Nah. That shit's lame. Katsuki pounded one fist against his chest. Although I'll give you credit, All Might kinda inspired the name choice. Really? How? You know I was there at Incident Zero, right? Vernon paused, and genuine sadness flickered in her eyes, the smirk disappearing. I didn't know. I'm sorry nah, don't apologize. I was there for All Might's last day. It hurt like a bitch at the time but I was just a kid, you know. All Might meant a lot to me, but looking back at it he went out like a hero, the way he should have. Only, everyone hears that word zero and thinks it's the worst thing in our history because we lost him that day. Ha! You want to change the meaning of it. It was less of a question from Vernon, more of a realization. Hell yeah. I told everyone since the day I got my quirk that one day I'd surpass even All Might and become number one, and I'm gonna keep that promise. I'll be number one, and on that day when people hear the word zero, it won't make them hurt remembering how All Might gave his life to protect us. It'll make them feel hope because they've got a new number one. And that way, he's the reason I wanted to become a hero, after all, so I'll keep part of him in my own name that way too. Katsuki laughed to himself, and grinned maniacally. Plus I kinda like the phrase ground zero. It's enough of a warning to all those villains out there who want to get in my way of what will happen to them, you know. Vernon chuckled, but before he could react to her and defend his name choice she cut across him, and held a fist out for a fist bump. Hey, I like it. Fits you to a T, dude. As long as you don't mind me saying I knew Ground Zero before he was famous, when you've made it to the top. I'm counting on it. He wouldn't normally have taken her lame gesture, but she'd put him in a good mood, and he returned the favor with a grin. They won't know what hit them. These young men certainly will, though. Katsuki paused at the sound of the new and unfamiliar voice, and turned to see an unusual man sliding up to him and Vernon at some speed. He was clearly a hero from the obnoxiously bright costume he was wearing, purple and green with a short green cape rippling out behind him, and a black domino mask over his eyes that rested above the most unnaturally chiseled jaw he had ever seen. He was a complete contradiction. He was tall and well-built and with that thick jaw, but he seemed to move really quickly as he literally slid to a halt beside them. Quirks did weird shit. Okay, who the hell are you? And what is up with your quirk? If I tried to explain to you what I'm capable of, we'd be here all day, young man. His voice was booming and chipper, energetic and overly cheerful to the point of sounding forced. Katsuki hated people who sounded this disingenuous. The name's Tatsuyuki Tokonoma, but on the job you can call me Sliden Go. I know you don't like Hero Commission heroes, but I promise you I'm not as bad as you might think. I need at least 3 more coffees before trying to deal with someone like you, Vernon muttered, not at all subtly. Sliden Go pouted, a strange look on the face of someone with a jaw as obscenely large as his. Now, Vernon, there's no need for that. I'm just here to come and help at this point. If you came to help us deal with the robbers, you're a little late, Katsuki snarked, propping one of the unconscious goons up against the dumpster. You might want to use your quirk to go a bit faster next time. Ha! The pro-hero's laugh was probably, in his head, akin to All Might's booming chuckle, but he just sounded like a cheap knockoff to Katsuki. Such fire in you. I like it. I was already a fan of yours after that interview you gave, but I like what I see even more, young apprentice. Ha! Katsuki felt something nagging at the back of his head, and he paused. What exactly did you like? That righteous sense of justice in you. Sliden Go slapped him on the back. Encouraging people who want to do good not to hold back on using their powers. It takes a strong soul to suggest that. Particularly in a world where we look to punish vigilantism, as I'm sure you know. Good on you for challenging that. Really? A commission hero is happy I'm saying shit which might make people break the law. Just between you and me. Sliden Go lowered his voice and waggled his eyebrows conspiratorially. If the law is an ass, why is it bad some people are willing to break it to use their powers for good? Katsuki nodded, filing away in the back of his head, and brushed the older pro's hand off of his back. Yeah, right. Now mind telling me why it is you came here to help, exactly? I'm just going to take those crooks off your hand, if that's alright. Go gestured up the street in the direction of the police cordon. My colleagues are looking for the ringleader now, but I'll take these two ready to bring them back to headquarters, now that they're secured. The commission thinks they might have connections to a larger gang and so you're going to interrogate them? Vernon asked, mockingly. Anything wrong with the police interviewing them, or do they not make them squeal enough for the commission these days? Go didn't seem perturbed by her comments at all, hefting one of the limp crooks over his bulging shoulder. What can I say, Vernon? I'm just trying to move with the times, that's all. Orders are orders, no matter what I might think of them. You're a real example to all, she said, rolling her eyes, and Katsuki had to resist the urge to snort at her comment. You're gonna be disappointed if you want the credit for the takedown. Those media rats over there have already clocked that it was me and the kid who did all the work here. I'm more than happy to leave you deal with the press and claim your glory, oh wonderful sidekick of Endeavor, Go said with a chuckle, and what infuriated Katsuki most was that the pro-hero's laugh sounded so genuine even after saying something which sounded so vicious. If the jovial smiles were a charade, he hadn't let it slip once. They'd be under no illusions anyway, given that I only just showed up. After all, what happened next was chaos and something Katsuki took a moment to process. From just down the street, behind the charred remains of the bar, there was a sudden loud fuzz in the air which made the entire street seem to vibrate, the dumpster behind Katsuki almost jumping into the air from the vibrations. Some of the windows of the shop behind him had remained intact despite his explosions earlier, but now they shattered in an instant following the wave of sound, and it appeared some of the police officers further up the street had fallen flat on their ass as a result of the blast. And then, as a skinny figure in a hoodie and mask began to tear away down the street. Stop right there, vigilante scum. Katsuki narrowed his eyes at the shout, recognizing the voice. Wait a minute, don't tell me that asshole is here. From behind the bar, wheezing as a result of his running, the familiar hulking figure of the pro-hero Death Arms came to a halt beside them. Damn it, they're too quick. They took out the ringleader before we could even get there, but the little bastard ran when I asked for a hero license. You might be able to keep up if it wasn't for all those cigarettes you love, Go said, with a wink at Katsuki that he completely missed while he tracked the vigilante running into an alleyway down the road. I'd help you, Shisuji, but my hands are rather full of criminal at the moment. Then one of our other pro-heroes can help. Death Arms trailed off with a snarl as he recognized Katsuki for the first time since the incident at Tetsuin Station. Well. Endeavor's boy wonder and the luckiest kid in Japan. Not that you deserve to be a hero, but now that you're here you can redeem yourself by catching that vigilante. Yeah, on it. I'll take it from here. Death Arms faltered at his response. Wait, seriously? You, the kid who threw it all away being a vigilante, wants to go catch a vigilante? I thought I'd have to remind you it's your duty as a hero to nah, don't sweat it. Leave this all to me. I'm quicker than you and know the neighborhood better than you, so leave it to me. Katsuki had made his mind up the second he saw which alleyway the vigilante had wandered into, knowing exactly what they'd come across and what he could do in this situation. Local knowledge was a blessing. I'll be back in a bit. Wait, Bakugo. Vernon stepped forward, looking uncertain. What are you doing? I'm doing what I've been asked to do. He looked up, met her gaze, and hoped she could read him. Gotta do the right thing, you know. For a second she paused, and then nodded, and he hoped she had worked him out. All right. I'll help the commission folks, while you go. Call me for backup if you need it. Heh. I won't need any help at all. With that, he turned heel and ignited 2 explosions in the palms of his hands and launched himself down the street in a leap, eyes fixed now on the target that was the alleyway. He was a Muzutafu local, born and raised, and they were only a few streets away from his home at this point, not far at all from the site of Incident Zero, and the memorial park a few hundred meters away to the north. He knew the area, and he knew what he needed to do. The hard part had been making sure that the Commission's pro-heroes didn't follow him. A second leap carried him to the end of the alleyway, and to make a show of sticking the landing to the pro-heroes behind him, one short and sharp explosion helped it look like he was planting himself down ready for business. He looked to see what the heroes were doing, satisfied himself that they were nowhere near, and turned his attention to the figure in the alleyway, frantically trying to break through the barricaded door of a disused office block behind him. I'll save you the hassle. They welded that door shut years ago. It's a dead end. The vigilante, skinny and shorter than him, spun on their heels, and he tried not to laugh at seeing the mask they were wearing. It was chunky and heavy-looking, and besides the fact that it had decent eye sockets, it didn't look like it would be easy to breathe while wearing it. Judging from the way they panted their response to him, he was right about that. Damn it. I'm just trying to help, I don't want a fight. Female, Katsuki noted from the voice as it trailed off, and young, if he had to guess, he would put her around his age. Funny. Neither do I. Wait. The vigilante seemed to realize who he was, but didn't let her guard down, 2 fists raised with 2 chunky blocks almost like his sweat gauntlets mounted on the wrists. You're Endeavor's apprentice? The one from the news? Yeah. Katsuki was used to being recognized at this point. After everything that had happened, it didn't bother him anywhere near as much anymore. He'd get that attention at number 1, anyway. And you're pretty shit at being a secret vigilante. Take it from someone else who was shit at being a vigilante and got caught on day 1. Remarkably, the vigilante didn't argue with him over that, but she didn't drop her fighting stance even a little. Ha! You ended up being picked up by the towering Inferno as an apprentice, and now you think you're hot shit. I see. Katsuki laughed, despite the ridiculous situation, at the bad joke and the shitty nickname. It was clear whoever was under the mask had some spunk. Hey, listen, I'm being serious. I don't know what your quirk is, but, back there, what you used when Death Arms tried to get you. That was a sonic attack, one way or another, which means you can't be walking around in the middle of the day looking to fight bad guys or people will hear your quirk and come running. And your fighting stance is pretty shit right now, even if we're just talking. You've had no martial arts training before, or you wouldn't hold yourself so damn loose. For a moment he thought the girl in the hoodie would jump at him, but she dropped the fists and took a step back from him, shoving them in the hoodie pockets. Damn. I mean, I should really want to punch you for saying any of that, but, you're not wrong. You're actually trying to help, aren't you? Hell yeah. Katsuki tooted to himself, thinking about Death Arms and Slide and Go. Look, they sent me here to take you down so they could arrest you and... I'm not gonna do that. You wanna do good or you wouldn't be out here, so I'm giving you the chance I never got to get out of here before they stop you, so you can keep on trying to do good. But you've gotta think about your doing this, alright? You need to find a broker and get better gear. You need to not rely on speedy escapes and ambushes every time and actually get some fight training. And god damn it, don't come out in the middle of the day and draw attention to yourself. If you want to keep doing good, do it another time, or you'll just get yourself caught. Huh. She looked like she paused, and then nodded. Alright. Shit timing, I get it. This is my first gig, so, next stop on the tour I'll change things up. Promise. Katsuki noticed the music references, and tried not to roll his eyes as he joined in. Fine. But you want an encore, so that means an escape route. Roll that dumpster back in the corner and open the manhole up. Seriously? The girl did as he suggested, and he could practically sense her disbelief as the manhole cover emerged from under a layer of trash. How the hell did you know that was there? Local knowledge. I went to school round here, before Ring of Fire took me under his wing. The teachers never cared that we opened up the old drain behind the sports shed and used to sneak out into the city at lunchtime. Not before Incident Zero, anyway. Katsuki jerked a thumb at the manhole as she maneuvered the cover off. They told us to stop using it when they got reports of some sludge villain wandering around in the old sewers, but Endeavor took care of him a while ago. It's a straight run to Aldera Junior High at the other end, and they won't have a clue you're there. Not on a Saturday, anyway. Wait. The vigilante's mask gave nothing away, but she clearly spun to stare at him before she put her foot down into the drain. How do I know this isn't a trap and you aren't just selling me to someone at the other end? Really? I'd beat the shit out of you now if I actually wanted to hand your ass in. Katsuki huffed. Look, you can worry about trusting me, but honestly, I'm doing this because nobody ever did it for me. I wanted to go to UA, and me getting caught as a vigilante blew any chance of that ever happening. If you want to keep doing good, then I'm just giving you the way out so you can carry on. Thanks, hot shot. The vigilante nodded to him, and lowered her bottom half into the drain, her skinny frame fitting easily through the manhole, before offering a hand out to him to shake. Guess I owe you one, huh? You can do one thing for me, if you like, he said, grasping the handshake and trying not to smirk. If you're about to be a creep, I'll punch you in the dick. Ha! Not like that. Now Katsuki smirked. If you're getting better gear, then get yourself a voice modifier. Not everyone will recognize you, but I sure as hell do. Listen to enough of your music and your interviews to know your voice when I hear it, and if you want to keep up that career as a singer, you're gonna need to try harder as a vigilante. There was a long pause. You like my music? Katsuki's grin widened as she didn't even try to deny his suspicions. He had got her. I drum, so the harder stuff from your band is better. I'd prefer you don't get arrested so you can get on with the next album, if you ask me. There was a funny noise and it took him a while to recognize that she had chuckled under her weird mask. Well, I'll be. Come find me in the studio when you're not busy saving the world, Sorcerer's Apprentice. We might actually get along. Stay out of trouble and I might take you up on that. If she had a witty response to that, Katsuki didn't hear it, replacing the manhole over the top of the drain and dragging the dumpster to block it as quickly and quietly as he could. He couldn't waste any time messing about or bantering back with her, as much as he had enjoyed their brief spar of words. Instead, within a couple of seconds, he had made the alleyway look as it had when he arrived, a complete dead end. With any luck, if anyone went to pursue her, it would look as if she vanished into thin air, and by the time anyone found the drain she would be out at Aldera and long gone. His work complete, Katsuki nodded to himself, and began to wander back to where he had been with Burnin and the pro-heroes. As much as he wanted to laugh, he had to resist the urge and pretend to look disappointed, gritting his teeth as if something was eating at him. He'd never been the best actor, but then some of the people he was about to speak to hadn't ever been the best heroes. Even if they saw through him, there wasn't much they could do by now. As it turned out, the only hero with Burnin by the time he got back was Death Arms, who looked him up and down with a scowl. Don't tell me you came back empty-handed. Does Endeavor not train his reject apprentices at all? Katsuki shrugged, looked down, kicked a bag of trash. Punk got the jump on me. Kicked me through a window in one of the office blocks and beat it. Hell if I know where they got to now. Death Arms stomped a little closer, and he could sense the heat of the hero's glare on him even without looking up. You really still think you can be a hero? When you can't even do one simple thing for us like this. I tried to fix your mess and catch your runaway vigilante for you, Katsuki snapped back, a little bit of genuine feeling creeping into his response. Don't get mad at me when even I can't clean up your mess. You watch your tongue, Death Arms growled, poking him with a meaty finger. You got lucky enough for Endeavor to pick you up last time you overstepped the mark, but keep making mistakes like this and he'll throw you out, boy. I'll make sure the weight of the law comes down on you that day for all your failings, you mark my words. You can't even keep a partner alive, Katsuki bit back, palms popping with an explosion to punctuate the point. We all saw the news. Mount Lady seemed like an ass anyway, but don't talk to me about failings when you couldn't even keep her safe. Death Arms' growl in his throat grew in ferocity, as he stepped forward as if wanting to punch Katsuki where he stood, but before he could move any further a well-timed cough from Burnin seemed to shake the Hero Commission Pro, and Death Arms shook his head and retreated. Whatever. You'll be dead meat soon, Bakugo. Don't show your face if you don't want to do the job properly. And Kamiji? Rein your kid in before he hurts himself. You're a sidekick, but even you should have more control over him. It's Burnin to you while we're on duty, Death Arms, Burnin replied, clearly not in the mood. Next time you're in the area and fancy doing some work so you don't get shown up by the old man's apprentice, let me know. Death Arms spat on the floor, only a few inches from her feet, and walked off, hulking muscles bulging as he strode away in a huff. PSSH. Always hated this town anyway. Katsuki shook his head, watching the punching hero walk away to the police line and disappear from out of their space. Useless extra. Shame the hero killer only got his partner. Katsuki laughed to himself at the sudden comment from Burnin, who appeared to be gritting her teeth in order to prevent herself getting too fired up. Damn. I don't expect that kind of dark shit from you. Setting a good example to the old man's apprentice, huh? You were thinking it too. Before Katsuki could either confirm or deny, Burnin nodded to him. Slidin' go left to take the two chumps you beat up, by the way. It's probably a good job he wasn't around though. He may not have bought that as easily as the meathead did. Bought what? Burnin eyed him, curiously. You're a shit liar, you know that. Katsuki looked at her expectantly, waiting for her to elaborate. Am I? The vigilante got the better of you? I've seen you hold your own against the old man, which means you're stronger than any average street punk with a Robin Hood death wish. Burnin looked at him, something shouldering in her eyes. You let them get away. Why? Katsuki shrugged, trying to keep a poker face and badly failing. What can I say? If there's people out there wanting to do the right thing, I'm not gonna stop them. Now Burnin smirked, and he realized that she had understood what he intended to do the moment he gave her the look. Giving them the chance you never got, huh? I'll give you one thing, Katsuki, you've got balls of steel to do that and lie to a commission pro about it. I like it. Heh. You're not gonna tell the old man, are you? Nah, you're kidding me, right? Some things he's best just not knowing about. Burnin clapped him on the back as they began to walk in the opposite direction to Death Arms and the police, wandering in the vague direction of the agency. Good work, Ground Zero. We'll make a good hero out of you yet. I'll be sure to tell the boss all about the rest of your good work today. That's not the most important thing to talk about when we go back to him though. Huh? Katsuki frowned, remembering what he had stored away, letting all the little nagging suspicions from earlier come to the fore and merge themselves into the dreadful theory he had come up with. What did you make of Slidin' Go? Tokaname. He's intense, yeah. Always has been a bit over the top. Why? It's just. Katsuki grimaced, not liking what he was about to say. Remember what he said about the interview? How he liked what I had to say. And how when I asked him, he kept talking about having powers but never once used the word quirk. Burnin came to a stop. Shit. You're kinda right. And I never picked that up at the time. Do you think he's part of the army? Maybe. If they've got someone inside the commission then that's not good for any of us, but... Katsuki's explosion crackled in his palm in anger. If he really is part of them, then he's a valuable part of them to be one of the commission's pro-heroes, and if that's the case we've got a lead. We've got someone to follow, who can bring us the rest of the bastards in their inner circle. For sure. Let's tell the boss, and see what he thinks. Burnin raised an eyebrow at him as they walked. You know, I thought I told you to stay focused on the now, and not go chasing ghosts in the army. You did. And I said fuck it, let's do both. Katsuki felt himself stand taller as he walked, determination propelling him forward. Sure, what Burnin said to him earlier had resonated with him. He wouldn't let their stupid games control him, he wouldn't let the threat of the army stop him from doing good elsewhere and beating villains elsewhere, saving lives from other evil causes. But he wouldn't lose at their game either, and if they were going to let their guard down around him, then he sure as hell would make them pay, or die trying. How could he call himself the number one if he didn't even try? Yo, Burnin. You ready to go crack some skulls and take out some ghosts? Lead the way. Ground Zero. They were all going to remember that name. He would make sure of it. In the middle of Muzutafu, some distance away from any wrecked remains of a former bar, some distance away from the hero agency of the country's #1 hero, lay a school. Alderete Junior High was not the most well-achieving of schools even before Incident Zero. The fact that it had 2 students going to UA this year was a miracle in of itself, and so with the budget cuts that had come in the wake of increased villain activity across Japan, some parts of it had fallen into disrepair. The gymnasium was well maintained, but the old sports shed used for its younger students to store football goalposts and tennis rackets had almost been forgotten, and as for the incredibly loose drain grate on the little concrete running to it, it was almost completely rusted through. It wouldn't have taken much to budge it at all. With a squeak and a clang, someone reached up from underneath the grate and lifted it completely off of its hinges, throwing it away to the side. Shit! The hooded vigilante, slightly out of breath from running the length of the tunnel, in case Endeavor's apprentice was wrong and a sludge villain really was lurking down there, burst through the open hole and pulled herself up onto the path, taking stock of her surroundings. It had been a long time since she had been anywhere near a school, having been pulled out to focus on recording one way or another, but to her immense relief and satisfaction it appeared that the apprentice had been genuine and had gotten her to safety. For now, she didn't have the commission on her tail. I really need to up my game, she muttered to herself, pulling the cheap mask off of her face and considering it for a moment, before casting it aside. It had been difficult to breathe in that thing, even if she could see all right, and as much as she had set out to take matters into her own hands and deal with the gang of robbers pestering the city, she was lucky she had even been able to take one. Maybe, just maybe, the boy had a point when he gave her such tough love. She was assuming a lot about what she could just do, and this was not a world where she could afford to take chances with her own life or with other people's lives. She needed to train up, she needed to smarten up, and she needed to find someone willing to sell her nice stuff to hide her face and gear up better. But first, she really needed to get out of town and get home. And for that, she needed a ride. The phone which she dug out of her pockets rang only twice before it was answered. Hey honey. Did everything go okay? Are you safe? I'm safe, yeah mom. Listen, can you please come and pick me up at Aldera High School? I may have taken a slight detour. Wild first show, if you get me. Slight detour? What on earth happened to you? I got a bit lucky. Endeavor's apprentice kinda helped me out of a tough spot. I'll tell you all about it when I'm in the car. Kyokujiro sighed, retracting her earphone jacks back from down her sleeves and wincing as she walked towards the school gates. She ached in places she didn't know she could ache. She knew she would feel the effects of this day for a few days after at least, and she had come very close to being caught on day one, but Kyoko was proud. This vigilante gig was going to be tough, but she knew that from the start, and at least now she knew where she needed to improve. She would rock this, however long it took to get things right. Trust me, it's a long, long story. Katsuki Bakugo. Quirk, explosion. Aged, 15. Mo Kamiji, Burnin. Aged, 25. Kyokujiro. Quirk, earphone jack. Aged, 15. So, let me get this straight. Kyoka kicked at an empty beer bottle which had fallen from the dumpster in the alleyway, and took some satisfaction at the melody of empty glass as it skidded away towards the main road. You met Dad back when he was still in his band, playing small sets in the underground scene and dive bars. In one of those bars, you and Dad both met a guy who turned out to be able to get Dad's band a slot wherever they wanted to play, as well as loads of new kit that was probably stolen from somewhere. In my defense, I never knew where it actually came from at the time. Right. Kyoka blinked, and as her mother whistled innocently, turned to look at the seedy bar which they were stood outside, tucked into an alleyway in the back streets of Tokyo and doing its best to be ignored by the rest of the world. And then, when the band broke up and you two went off to have me, you still kept in touch with the shady guy you met in a bar. Well, of course. Raising a kid is expensive, Kyoka. If we wanted to get your father a comeback later on, I wasn't going to turn my nose up at cheap gear. No, I get that. I just... Kyoka stared at the posters on the wall, advertising some underground cage fight that sounded totally punk rock and totally terrifying at the same time, and shook her head. I wasn't expecting this when you said he might be able to help. Hey, I just reached out on a whim. Mika shrugged, one of her earphone jacks tapping against her collarbone as if fidgeting. I'm not gonna complain if he's cornered half the black market after Incident Zero. That's good equipment for my baby girl to keep herself safe, so count me in. Yeah, but there's black market, and then there's... Kyoka gestured at the whole building in front of her, the faded posters, the cracked brickwork, the blacked-out windows. Black market. Like, death metal black. Welcome to the Black Parade black. Am I going to get murdered if I walk through the damn door, sorta black? Oh bless you, Kyoka, you're so young and concerned sometimes. Your father and I went to gigs in much rougher places than this in our heyday. Mika strode forward towards the door, and turned to look at her daughter. You coming, or what? Sure. Not like my day can get any weirder than it already has. Kyokujiro had never meant anything more in her life. When Kyoka had made the decision that in a world where the bad guys seemed to be around every corner and the government didn't want to help the little man, she wanted to go rogue as a vigilante and try to right a few wrongs, she would have been lying if she said she expected it to go quite like this. The theory had been simple, as she discussed it with her mother between takes in the recording studio: wear a mask to disguise her face, hide her earphone jacks by running them down the sleeve of her hoodie so they didn't blow her cover, stick to small jobs and slip under the radar while publicly advocating change in the system. It sounded like the punk rock dream for a young girl angry at the world and wanting to do whatever she could to change it. What Kyoka had realized very early on was that dreams often didn't contain enough of a grounding in reality to go exactly as planned. She had been able to use her earphone jacks before to channel vibrations from her heart through the speaker of her phone, turning it into a temporary weapon. This had filled her with hope until she realized how impractical it would be to carry around a speaker all the time, robbing her of the ability to hold on to anything. After a few days of playing around and canonicalizing her old portable speakers, she had enough to mount them on the back of her hands using gloves, a miniature gauntlet. Kyoka had been really impressed with her improvisation, notwithstanding the numerous times she gave herself an electric shock trying to get them to work. Now she had a weapon to defend herself and go after the bad guys. That had been absolutely fine, until she actually encountered a bad guy and realized just how out of her depth she had been. She had tried to be careful, picking a fight she thought she could win and one where she could get in and out quickly. The news of a trio of robbers doing the rounds in Mizutofu had caught her eye easily. After hearing all about the Tatooine Station incident on the news before, the city wasn't far on the outskirts of Tokyo, a simple ride to travel from the recording studio and do some stakeouts. On arrival, it seemed the trio had been split apart. Two were holed up in a bar with hostages, and Kyoka had seen heroes and police begin to arrive from the distance. Given the need for discretion, it had been simple and preferable for her to leave that situation be, and not expose her identity. But the ringleader, on the other hand, some guy with brick-like skin. He had ran from the scene and right into her path. That was all the opening she needed, the first time she could make a difference and take someone bad off the streets. Kyoka thought all of these things, until the second she threw a punch that bounced off him like a drumstick off a cymbal, and hurt like a bitch. Only at that point did she realize how completely unprepared she had been. The guy was huge, with skin that didn't look like it would crack if someone dropped one of her band's subwoofers on him, and clearly had the experience of a successful career in crime to go with him. The only reason he hadn't immediately bodied her, she reasoned afterwards in the car, was the surprise of being attacked by a skinny 15-year-old in a mask that gave her such shit visibility, and made her breathing 10 times louder. It was a wonder she had even landed a punch. The Gola man had laughed at her, snarled, raised two chunky fists to the heavens as if to smash her brains out, and all she could do in a panic was loose off the biggest sonic wave she could from her jacks. Talk about a killer riff. The sound wave in an otherwise still alleyway had done exactly what she had been trying to avoid, alert every asshole in a several-block radius where she had been. That included, to her horror, the pro-hero Death Arms, who had apparently been sent by the Hero Commission to deal with the same mess she had decided to interfere with. A bad debut had nearly gotten even worse, as Kyoka had panicked and tried to flee a top 50 pro who would have thrown her ass in jail the second he laid hands on her, a pro who apparently summoned a nearby hero to help him. She wasn't quite ready to kiss her music career goodbye and say hello to the inside of a cell in Tartarus, not if she could help it, but the second she ran into a dead end she had expected the worst, hearing the loud crashing behind her of the guy on her tail as he arrived. Katsuki Bakugo had been a surprise entirely. Kyoka kept up with the news more than anything else, around her busy schedule, even before she started trying to scout out villains. The saying, "Art imitates life," was one she knew, and one she lived by. Good music could capture the mood of the moment, and good punk music resonated with people because they could feel what they were living and relate to it, so she studied the headlines and learned what struck a chord. Kyoka knew more than enough about the system, and the major players in the world, and so the news endeavor had taken the Tatooine station boy as an apprentice had reached her long before he blew up on TV at the media and the Hero Commission. His pride and his anger were palpable, his rudeness on another level. Kyoka hadn't wanted to like it, because it screamed of all the negative traits she saw throughout the current hero system, the ones which had spurred her into taking action. There was something about him though, the defiant raging against the dying of their system, which hit the right note with her. It was punk at its most feral, no message of hope but a call to arms nonetheless. And then she had met him. Safe to say she had not expected him to find her an escape route, no matter how much he hated the system of the commission. Not handing her in would cause him trouble, but he just seemed not to care. She hadn't expected him to lay down some home truths with her, to see right through her and how ill-equipped she had been for the whole vigilante side gig, and as much as part of her had wanted to bite back and defend herself, he had a point. She hadn't got any form of self-defense or fighting technique to fall back on, she hadn't done her homework to think of contingencies, and she didn't have the gear to keep up or compensate. She had been lucky he had helped her, and seemed to take a shine to her. He had given her a lot to think about. She would definitely try and extend that invite to him for a studio visit as soon as she could. Didn't make it any less weird that he had been so helpful, but still. Now, though, she had this weirdness to deal with. She had told her mom exactly what had happened in the back of the car, as she rubbed an ice pack over her bruised knuckles, and to her amazement her mom's response was to declare that she knew just the guy to help. They couldn't fix the lack of fighting practice right away, she would need sparring lessons before then, but her lack of gear was seemingly something Mika had in hand, to her great surprise. And so, after one sore car journey back into Tokyo, here they were. A bar, and a substantial risk of getting mugged or contracting diseases if she stayed outside in the alleyway any longer. Maybe even both. Sure, her parents had been pretty wild back in their younger days, but she didn't know they had played in places like this grimy bar, and she certainly didn't know that her parents had kept in regular contact with shady types from the underworld. Mika's response to her explaining the history had left her with far more questions than answers. Those would have to wait, going on the look on her mom's face as she strode through the door. Kyoka would just have to keep up and pray they weren't in too deep for now. As Kyoka followed her mom through the door, rolling her eyes at the little bell that tinkled above the door, the bartender looked up, third eye blinking twice at the sight. They probably looked weird, mother and daughter so alike with their earphone jacks, Kyoka clutching an ice pack to her knuckles. Well. Not often, I gotta say, that I get a famous face in here. Not often you get anyone in here, looking how quiet it is, Kyoka snarked, trying not to let her disgust at the wave of stale alcohol show on her face. You like my music? The bartender looked at her, thoroughly unimpressed, and didn't even acknowledge her joke. Some of it ain't hard enough. You're a bit too well known to be somewhere like my hole, don't you think? We know exactly why we're here, Mika said smoothly, gesticulating to her mobile in her hand. I got told I could come here to buy gear from an old dog dash. I dunno who you're calling old, Mika Jiro, but I promise you I've got more than enough new tricks since we last met. At the sound of the voice, Kyoka turned to see the man her mom had apparently brought her to meet, and she took a second to process what was in front of her. He was middle-aged, perhaps slightly older than her mother, with graying hair and the weirdest look in his eyes. There was a twinkle, for sure, a rogue's glint which marked the man as someone who knew what he did was not strictly right, but Kyoka could sense a bassline within the smile, a suggestion that he was no stranger to the darker side and wouldn't shy from it himself. All in all, he gave off the air of a hyena in a purple blazer, scavenging, mocking, but very capable of handling himself in hard times. You know this guy, Mom? Kajiro. Mika had completely ignored her and walked up to the guy, shaking his hand. Kyoka could tell they knew each other of old from the look in her mom's eyes. Thank you for helping on such short notice. The man, Kajiro, waved a hand as if dismissing it. It's nothing for an old friend. I was sorry to hear about Kyotoku. That man's crazy passion was enough to give me a few good memories. Heh. Mika looked wistful for a second. I'm sure he's raising hell wherever he is now. Me too. The man chuckled, before turning to Kyoka. Although you're not here for a catch-up with an old-timer like me, are you? You came with requests. You came on business. For this young lady. That's right, her mom said, with a comforting smile in her direction. Turns out being a part-time vigilante isn't as easy as it looks. Don't want her getting hurt, do I? Say no more. She looks the spitting image of you. And apparently she's inherited both your musical talents. Flattery gets you everywhere. Kyoka had been apprehensive around the guy, but she was a sucker for anyone who gave her music a compliment. Sorry, Mom kinda dragged me here, so I don't really know who you are. If you know who I am, usually you're doing something you shouldn't be. He grinned and extended a handshake. It was the sort of firm and honest handshake she would expect from someone who wasn't entirely genuine. The name's Jiren. I'll take your mother calling me Kajiro, but just since we're here on business and you're doing things you shouldn't, I won't use your name and you won't use mine. Kyoka raised an eyebrow at the emphatic way he said that. Oh. Don't like your customers knowing your real name? Just as much, I bet, as you not wanting villains to know they're getting their ass kicked by a pop star. Hey. My music is definitely not pop and you know it. Ha. She's got your fire, alright. The now-named Jiren turned to the bartender. Inamura, do you mind calling Toshi through, and making yourself scarce? Since it's business, and all. The bartender sighed like he had heard it 1,000 times before. Kyoka realized he probably had. Fine. Don't break anything while I'm gone, Jiren. No promises. As the door closed behind the bartender, Jiren smirked, almost feline and wicked. I've gotta say, people as well known as you don't tend to start a side hustle as a vigilante. Or come my way, come to think of it. I hear you need new gear to keep up. I need a lot of things, Kyoka said, bluntly. There was no shying away from it. I don't know what Mom told you, but I nearly got my ass kicked on the first day. I need to train, for sure, but if you've got anything to give me an edge. If I've got anything? My dear, you really do have no idea who I am. Jiren stretched out his skinny arms as if wanting to bathe in some glory. There's a reason a little broker like me is a C-rank villain, in the eyes of the commission. Anyone who's anyone gets their gear from me, so rest assured I'll have what you need. C-rank? Kyoka narrowed her eyes at her mom. You didn't tell me you were bringing me to a villain. I didn't know he was. Mika looked at Jiren coolly. You really have been busy. Jiren shrugged, not looking at all fazed by the attention that comment had received. You think me hanging around in bars like this was gonna keep me out of trouble? The sort of people who come somewhere like her and who buy from me don't want questions answered, just like you. I don't ask questions who buys from me, why they want my information or my support gear, and they don't ask where I get stuff from. I just take the money and move on. If that labels me a villain, so be it. Right. Kyoka was unconvinced by that answer, but the need to work on what she had was keeping her from walking out the door. You're asking yourself if this is a price worth paying, aren't you? Jiren had apparently seen right through her, and as she started he chuckled to himself, lighting a cigarette. Look, you've made a choice that this system is broken, right? That you need to do something while the heroes are making a mess of it all. You and everyone else who walks through my door. Sure, they have different reasons, some want to do it to save people, some want to do it to profit. But whatever your noble goals are for going rogue, someone is going to paint you as a villain for what you're doing whether you like it or not. I know, but I don't care. Kyoka's pride made her say fiercely, and she had to bite back her frustration. People are being failed every day because of this world we live in. If the price I have to pay to change that is getting a few support items off someone shady, then fine, I'll pay up. Jiren looked at her with a twinkle in his eye. You really are new to this, aren't you? Nobody who's had much exposure to our side of the world ever uses the word shady. Kyoka couldn't help but groan at that, as her mom laughed behind her. You know what? Just show me the damn gear. All in good time. My right-hand man will have some stuff for you in a bit. Jiren beckoned her over, and despite the rude gesture she obliged, as he took hold of her mask she had been carrying and inspected. You weren't kidding when you said you were new. The fact you beat someone wearing this gives me a lot of questions about what he was doing. Yeah, I tried to be clever and all but I couldn't breathe. And someone heard my voice and recognized me, so. Kyoka rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. I guess I need a voice alteration thing too. Jiren gave her a dry look. You've already exposed your identity. No kidding, you need help. It was Endeavor's apprentice. That Bakugo kid. Kyoka shrugged, not worried in the slightest. Considering he kinda helped me get away from the commission, I'd say he's not gonna tell anyone. Ha. I always thought the guy was an ass. Don't tell me there's actually more to him under all that shouting. The drawling voice of the newcomer was tired and dry, almost bitter in how it talked about Endeavor's apprentice. When Kyoka turned, she didn't know what she had expected, but a boy her age was certainly not it. He was tall, a lot taller than her, with wild indigo hair that flared out behind him in an untamable mess. What she spotted immediately were his purple eyes, deep tired bags underneath them, a resigned look in them. Almost like he didn't want to be there. Sorry, this is your right-hand man? For now, the young man muttered, placing a large cardboard box down on the bar beside Jiren. Those amplifier gloves from Feel Good Inc. weren't easy to find. Fix your damn storehouse, old man. That's what I pay you for. Now show some manners, Toshi. Jiren clapped the skinny boy on the back and Kyoka tried not to laugh as he rocked from the hit. This is my boy, Hitoshi Shinso. He's helping me out for now as a favor until I can get him a meeting with the right people, since he has nowhere else to go. Gotta keep a low profile when you've run away from the Hero Commission, right Toshi? Do you seriously have to tell everyone that? Hitoshi sagged, shaking his head. Every damn customer you have in the underworld knows where I've come from now. You wanna make friends, then trust people with your name for starters. Jiren shrugged, looking at Kyoka as if lost what to do with him. He'll learn. So, you wanna look at your new toys? In a bit. Kyoka eyed Hitoshi, unsure what to make of him. A Hero Commission kid, in a place like this, under the wing of a broker who seemed to have connections to half the criminals in Japan. Something didn't add up. You ran away. Why? Hitoshi didn't flinch from the blunt question, to his credit. More than enough reasons. They're not heroes. Not anymore. So bad that your best response was to run away and find a villain to hole up with? Kyoka asked, frowning and not understanding his curt response. Trust me, I wouldn't be here if I had better options. You wouldn't understand what that's like. Toshi. Jiren growled, and as the young man huffed and looked away, he shot Kyoka a look. Right. Your gear, Miss Jiro. Right. Kyoka spent a second longer staring at Hitoshi, who was sullenly staring at the bottles behind the bar and deliberately not making eye contact with her. Whatever his problem was that had caused that blunt response, it wasn't worth it. The gear. Good stuff, right Kajiro? Mika had a smile on her face that Kyoka used to see whenever her mom decided to mess with her dad. No second-hand junk. Jiren actually looked offended for a second. Hey. C rank, remember? It might be second-hand but the things I get from Detnerat are fresh out of their box. Yeah, no kidding. Kyoka had picked up the mask which had been included in the box of gadgets, turning it over in her hand before she placed it over her face and took a couple of deep breaths. Light to the touch and easy to breathe in, the air she was breathing through it felt cooler and fresher than the stale air in the bar. Whoa. This thing is rockin'. Oh, that's a beauty, alright. Jiren's voice had the swagger of a salesman to it now. Detnerat made that back in the day as a prototype for the Kyoto Police riot control team. Air filtration and gas filters, not at all claustrophobic on your vision, and the kicker. A lovely voice distortion circuit, perfect to hide their front-line officer identities and eliminate accountability for crimes in the line of duty. Kyoka looked at him with a smirk. Geez, giving this a glowing review, aren't you? Heh, ethics committees vetoed their use back in the day. Just a shame Detnerat didn't keep them in a more secure warehouse. Jiren patted the box of support gear. Not all of my customers get gear this good, you know. Killer. And the gloves? Kyoka held them up, and her eyes widened with glee. They're amps. Just like my gloves. Only these ones were made in a lab, not a basement, so 10 times lighter and 10 times less likely to short-circuit and hurt you in a pinch. Jiren took her old gloves off of her without resistance and held them up to his eyes, like a jeweler inspecting the facets of a diamond. Not a bad effort, though. You sure you didn't fancy going to UA in the support course? Not my jam. Kyoka rifled through the rest of the box quickly and grinned at her mom. Okay, moral questions aside, this stuff is amazing. How much am I going to have to pay for? Mika waved her off dismissively. You're not paying, sweetie. We have enough money from the payout of your father's life insurance that these are on me. Seriously? Kyoka faltered, realizing what her mother was saying. I've got enough money from the last album, I can oh, I know you have enough money. Mika leaned over to dig an elbow into her ribs, and Kyoka cursed how skinny she was that it made her sides hurt, just for a second. But you are also my daughter, and if this keeps you safe while you go make the world a better place, it's worth the money. And hey, if Kajiro's some big shot villain these days C rank does not make me a big shot, the broker groused, to Kyoka's amusement. Then it's probably better I pay, so some tabloid doesn't pick it up and run a story. Mika nodded to Jiren. We'll take it all. I'll send you the money tonight. Pleasure as always. Jiren smirked, and bowed his head. Kyoka laughed internally at how he looked so insincere. Discounted, of course, for old time's sake. And they say I don't have a heart. Well, this is great. All the goods went down well. Now the pop princess can have all the gear and still have no idea. Kyoka froze on hearing that remark, and turned to look at Hitoshi with a glare, earphone jack snaking up and pointing at him angrily. Excuse me? Seriously, what is your problem, dude? I heard why you came in from Jiren, even before you confirmed it yourself, Hitoshi said, tapping one bony finger on the wooden bar top. You got in way over your head, nearly blew your cover, and only got out because Endeavor's anger management project decided not to be a dick for 10 seconds and give you a chance. That should have been your wake-up call. Toshi. Jiren said, the warning in his tone plain to hear. Don't say anything you'll regret, boy. Oh, believe me, I've not said enough. Hitoshi shot him a glare as well. All the best gear in the world doesn't mean anything if she hasn't got a clue how to use it. Do you even know how to fight? Has anyone ever taught you self-defense around all those interviews and album signings? Seriously? Now Kyoka was pissed. I know it's not enough on its own. Endeavor's apprentice was kind enough to tell me that before he let me go. If you think for 1 second I'm going to forget that, or not do anything to train myself up, then you're a fucking moron. Kyoka Mika warned, trying to gesticulate to stop her. I'm the moron. You seriously think you can just turn up at the gym, take some beginner classes, smack a punching bag and be ready for the outside world? Hitoshi stood now, looming over her. Bakugo didn't give you a second chance, he gave you an out. The people out there have years of training and on-the-job wisdom that means they'd kick your ass in a real fight. Even with the new gear, you'll be smacked down before you can even say vigilante. But you're not gonna take it. Hell no, I'm not. Kyoka wasn't going to let height difference get in the way of standing her ground, and she brought her jacks up to keep them pointed at Hitoshi's face. Why would I give up? What am I supposed to do, sit here and do nothing? Let all the villains win and let the heroes mess the whole thing up. You don't have to do nothing, with a platform like yours. You can use it as a force of good, use your music to call for change, without risking everything because you didn't realize you were out of your depth. The good heroes in the old days risked everything to keep us safe. Why should I hold back and be any different? Kyoka glared at him. I'm not gonna be lectured by someone who gave up on the hero commission and fled to the criminals. Just because you couldn't face a world like this and would rather become the villain than even try to be the hero. I couldn't face it. I became a villain. Is that what you think? Hitoshi smacked his palm on the side of the bar, and Kyoka saw something flicker in his eyes. For some reason that comment had properly enraged him. I've lived too damn much of my life being called a villain to take that from you when I try and help. Maybe if you didn't behave like a dick, you wouldn't get called a villain. Maybe if my quirk wasn't brainwashing, I wouldn't have to spend my whole life convincing people I want to do good. Brainwashing? That's seriously his power? Mika asked aloud in the background, before Jiren shushed her and lit a cigarette, clearly unwilling to intervene in the argument. Kyoka raised an eyebrow at that confession, surprised at his bluntness, before she shook her head. Dude, I don't care what your quirk is. I'm not gonna argue with you over that, and if people didn't give you a chance, fuck them, because that's not what counts. It's people's actions that define them, not their quirk. And you left the chance to become a hero behind so that you could sit in some sleazy bar and sell stolen gear to bad people? What do you think that defines you as? You don't know anything. Hitoshi scrunched his hand into a fist. You don't know what they're doing, so don't you dare. I know enough to see you're giving up. She didn't back down even as his voice rose. What else do you call this? How about trying to save your life from what's to come before you throw it all away, you naive bastard? The yell from Hitoshi actually made her step back, but as she looked to bite back, Kyoka saw the look in his eyes and stopped. It wasn't a look of anger, or frustration at arguing with her. It was desperation, and the fact she didn't know why she could sense that confused and terrified her in equal measure. What do you mean, what's to come? For a long moment, the boy seemed frozen, before he sighed, so intensely that his whole body seemed to slump from the effort. Look. The reason I get so hung up on using my quirk for good? It's because others with similar quirks to me aren't using theirs for good, at all. My mother, an underground hero, the only reason I got into the commission and got the chance to use my quirk for good? She's one of them. I left because of what she's doing for them, what they plan on doing. He moved to the bar, and ran his hands over the lid of the box containing the gear which he and Jiren had prepared for her. They hate vigilantes almost as much as they hate the normal criminals, because you're making them look bad and doing their job for them. But instead of fix the way they're working, and because of this messed up world, they're just gonna deal with the problem by making sure you don't even exist anymore. They want to kill vigilantes. Not just lock you in a hole in the ground and forget about you, they will murder you in the name of keeping the streets theirs and theirs alone. He turned to look at her, and what struck Kyoka was the absolute despair he could see in her eyes. My own mother is doing it. A quirk like mine that can take control of someone's mind, and she's not using to talk jumpers off a ledge, to get villains to put down their guns. She's using it on Hawks the number 2 hero. The wing hero, their precious baby hero they grew within their own walls. She's using her quirk to wipe out his inhibitions, to mold him into someone they can use to kill criminals and vigilantes without any of the hesitation of a good and moral hero. His voice cracked, indigo eyes staring right through her. And I don't know what's worse. The fact they applaud her for doing it, or the fact they think this is the only justifiable and effective thing to do. The fact that I don't know if other heroes are being subjected to it in the name of controlling society, or the fact that innocent people who just want to do their best are going to be caught by this. It's coming for all of us. And, it'll come for you. Kyoka stared at him, and really wanted to say something to help the guy in that moment. The weight of what he was saying was not lost on her, and what it would mean for her if she got caught. Now she understood why he was so bitter about the thought of her going out as a vigilante. "You're warning me not to go through with this, aren't you?" Hitoshi took a deep breath through his nose and nodded. "Yeah. I am. Look, I've seen a lot of people try to do what you are, people with the best intentions, and some dream of wanting to be a proper hero, to rage against the machine. Please tell me you made that reference on purpose." Kyoka cursed internally when his face was completely blank, and stopped smiling. "Sorry, carry on." "Right. You might have that dream, but the reality of what's out there in the shadows, and what's coming for all of us is going to eat someone with no experience alive." Hitoshi swore under his breath and stuffed his hands into his pockets. "I just want to save someone before they hurt themselves, and I might as well try and start with you. Go back to your sound studio, use your songs and your platform, start speaking out on TV and give people a battle cry to remember. Please, don't throw it all away." Kyoka didn't know what to say for a moment. She had expected others would think that it was dumb, what she was doing, expected them to tell her she was making a mistake. Not in a million years would she have expected someone to tell her all of this too, and she'd have been lying if it didn't scare her. One lowlife, no reputation robber had been difficult enough for her, with her complete lack of situational awareness of training, and now she was being told there were people within the ranks of the heroes who would actually murder her for what she was doing, given the opportunity. The idea of continuing in the face of that, dealing with such huge stakes, was daunting to say the least, and it made her hesitate for a long second. But, she had made a promise to herself, in her heart. To her father. She had a song to finish, and she had to live up to it. To be a hero too. "I'm sorry, Hitoshi." She nodded, bunching a fist. "I can't not try. I can't sit back and do nothing. I appreciate your warning, but I can't just be on the sidelines cheering people on. Sometimes you've got to get in the mosh pit, I guess." But. His face was completely unreadable. She let her earphone jacks drop, and took a step back towards her mother. "But I'm not going to throw it all away. Not after your warning. I'm not ready, not like I could be. I know I need to practice using my gear, and practice fighting without it. It's like my songs. I can jam out, but if I never rehearse any of my songs I'm not gonna be good on stage, right? Is everything a music reference to you?" "Not everything. About 60% of what she says in the long run," Mika called from behind the pair of them. "You'll get used to it." "Thanks Mom." Kyoka rolled her eyes. "So I guess what I'm saying is, I won't promise to give it up. But I won't go out again until I'm properly ready, and so that I can be ready. I want to come and train here a few times a week. With you. If that's alright. With me?" Now Hitoshi's composure broke, and the young man looked confused as much as anything. "Sorry, hang on. Why with me? 1, you're a hero commission kid, so you've got more training than me and will know what's easier to get used to." Kyoka tapped twice on the side of the bar. 2, you've got all the backstage intel, so I want to know more about what they're getting up to. And 3, no offense dude, but you can do better than this. If you really want to prove it's not a villain's quirk, and stop the commission from hurting people, then you can do more than sit in a bar drinking, warning idiots like me that we're making poor life choices. Don't you think? There was a moment of silence, broken by a sudden chuckle from behind Hitoshi. Both teens spun to look at Jiren, the older broker shaking slightly as he laughed. "Hoo boy, this one's got fire. I think she just threw down the gauntlet to you, Toshi. Seems like you've got a sparring partner." Hitoshi frowned, looking at his boss. Are you sure? Is that going to get in the way of our arrangement for nah, don't you worry, Jiren interrupted, his gold tooth flashing as he smiled. We'll have plenty of time for that and for you to show Miss Jiro the ropes. There's the old gym round the corner, the one they use as a backup venue for the underground cage matches. If you two want to get started, I can't think of a better place. Then it's sorted. Mika jumped up and patted her daughter on the shoulder. I'll text Jiren with some dates and times when we're clear of recording, and we can work around that. Sounds dope. Kyoka looked up at the taller teen across from her, a challenging smirk on her face, and held out a fist. I'm in if you are. Unless you're chicken. Hitoshi tooted, and reluctantly bumped her fist with his own. Don't make me regret this. Wouldn't dream of it. Hey, Kyoka. I'm sorry for what I said. I was trying to drive you off with whatever means I could, and I guess that means I didn't hold back. Hitoshi nodded to himself. I meant well, promise. So did I. She smiled, and hoped that he didn't think she was mocking him. Thanks for the warning. I'll be careful, promise. And thanks for the gear. Hey, it's my stock, not his. Jiren nudged his apprentice in the ribs, and Kyoka snorted with laughter as Hitoshi clearly hadn't been expecting it. Now go on, get out of here before anyone realizes where you are. Go test your new toys, and let me know when you want to sort of spar out with the rude one over here. Thank you for helping her out, Kajiro, Mika said, taking her daughter's elbow and heading towards the door. In a world like this stuff makes me a lot happier for her to be going out. Ask, and I shall provide. Jiren sent a twinkling smile Kyoka's way. I'll be seeing you soon, oh Queen of Punk. You better believe it. Kyoka gave one final nod to Hitoshi and his strange guardian, the black market man of mystery who somehow knew her mom, and followed Mika out of the door of the bar and back towards the alleyway. The box in her hands clanked as she walked, the sound contents of the high-end gear she had somehow been able to acquire, and her head was slightly spinning with so many thoughts from the brief argument with Hitoshi. Kyoka was struggling to focus on just one of them. This day had not gone the way she expected at all, and that argument was another way. She really hadn't been ready for what the life of a vigilante would entail, at all. But now she was starting to get on the right track. Now she would show them she could be a musician and a hero, and one rocky debut wouldn't get in her way. So it's tough, being a hero too. She asked herself, under her breath, and smirked. Bring it on. As the door slammed shut behind Kyoka and her mother, Hitoshi turned to Jiren and bowed his head apologetically. Sorry. I know I was rude, you've got a big heart, kid. Big mouth, sure, but a big heart. Jiren looked both ways to see if Inamura had returned, and dove behind the bar when he was sure the barman was nowhere near, claiming a bottle of scotch as his own. As much as I don't mind a steady revenue stream of young vigilantes wanting to change the system, you're right to get angry about some of them going in blind. I'd rather all my customers weren't killed on their first day out, after all. Hitoshi hesitated. You're not mad. It was a realization, and not a question. Nah. Part of me feels I should, because I can't have you go scaring off business like that. But, that girl has a lot to live for and a lot of good she could do. Jiren poured a stiff measure, critically examined it, and poured more into the glass. Plus, she had you nailed, boy. All of that coming from someone like me is fine, but someone your age. Someone you can relate to. Maybe training with her and having her challenge you at the same time will be good in the long run. Heh. We'll see. If it keeps her from killing herself. Hitoshi allowed himself a little smile. Then I'm not gonna complain. I thought you'd taken a liking to her. Excuse me? Nothing. Although. Jiren poured him a drink too, and slid it across the surface of the bar, the skilled hand of years not making the glass tip one bit. If you ever call her music pop again, I don't think the Hero Commission are going to be what kills you. Right. Hitoshi took a swig, more used to the taste after being longer associated with Jiren and getting to know his habits. So I guess I'll start sparring with her next week. Late next week. I've got something that might be of interest for you. Jiren appraised him. You remember my schedule this morning? Hitoshi's mind whirred through the meetings which Jiren had told him about, before he left for the morning. There was the gang leader from the suburbs of Mizutofu, that old doctor who asked for some contacts to hire for a job, and that one with the weird codename. Swimmer. Spinner, Jiren corrected. I've never told you about Spinner, have I? Not that I recall. Is he important? Not on his own. He's a bit of a fanboy. He's well trained these days, but that's only because of his master taking some time with him. Jiren smirked. His master, on the other hand, is very important. Time was, the hero killer always worked alone, but, now he's got Spinner and others to send to me with requests. Hitoshi paused, tapping the bottom of the glass against the bar twice. Ha! The hero killer's right hand, met with you. And of course, I just so happened to mention that an old Hero Commission student had come my way. One with pro-hero parents, and enough dirt to surprise even Stain, old hand that he is. Jiren deliberately didn't make eye contact with him. You can meet him early next week, if you want. Stain wants everything you know, if you're happy to share like you said before. And given that you were so willing to share with me, and with the girl Kyoka today I'll do it, Hitoshi interrupted without a moment's thought, trying not to let the relief spill into his voice at finally being able to speak to someone who might be able to change the dire situation with Sway, Hawks and the whole circus within the commission. Thanks, old man. I didn't expect you'd move so quick to get me an audience. I'm a softie, deep down, Jiren said, with noticeable sarcasm. Just do me a favor and don't forget me if the hero killer likes you enough to offer you shelter. I am the one who took you in, after all. I won't forget you, don't worry. It'll be even easier if you offer me discounts on gear once I'm gone. Ha! Have I not given you enough? Jiren lit another cigarette. Keep that up, and I'll make you pay for those artificial vocal cords when I'm done tweaking them to match your quirk. Shutting up now, sir. As Jiren laughed, Hitoshi turned back around, and allowed the brief moment of amusement he felt to flash across his face. After that, the weight of everything hit him again, and he found himself filtering out the rest of the sounds of the bar around him, the sounds of the police sirens outside. None of that mattered, really. Hitoshi had been sick of seeing the young and idealistic, the naive and the clueless, wandering into their lap with a load of money to burn on support gear as if it would make them the next All Might. Incident Zero had done more than enough damage to society, but given everything he knew about how the Commission were intending to clamp down on the lawless, how Sway and the others wanted to violate all that was right in order to regain control, he could barely stomach seeing the backs of people who he knew were leaving to their deaths. He had lost his temper at the famous singer who had wandered through the bar door like all the others, angry at the sheer waste of a life it could have been, but to his great relief she had actually listened in some way. Maybe, just maybe, even one person could be saved by his hand. No matter how useless he was until he could share what he knew with those who could make a difference, those who had the power to act, Hitoshi might be able to be the hero, and not the villain after all. Hitoshi looked back down at his drink, and frowned. I just hope we aren't too late. Somewhere across Japan, deep within a hidden alleyway at the heart of the city of Saitama, Denki Kaminari tried to yell for help, and failed to get anything more than a scream of pain out. It was just his luck that he had just been starting to turn a corner when this happened, as well. Denki had applied to UA for the new intake that year, as had been his childhood dream long since before Incident Zero. The death of All Might hadn't been enough to deter him from wanting to become a pro hero, wanting to be something cool for people to look up to. UA turning him down from their entrance exam had been hard to take at first, but it had made him look at himself and realize he hadn't been ready to go plus ultra at all. Electrification wasn't completely under his control, and one use of his upper wattage limit turned him into a complete derp. He wouldn't be a great hero like that at all. So Denki had apologized to his parents, and kicked himself back up with every bit of determination he could find. The training hadn't been easy, but he had done everything he could and was finally able to get a grip on his quirk, able to use higher wattage without burning himself out and going brain dead the first time he tried. He'd show them all he could be trusted with his powers. He could be a great hero after all. And as far as Denki had been concerned, the job of a hero was to stop bad guys in the moment. So when he had been walking home from school yesterday with two of the girls from his class, including that new cutie who maybe, just maybe, might have been interested in getting a coffee, and two ugly shirtless villains jumped out of a van and tried to grab the girls, and when there wasn't a hero or policeman there was no way he was gonna stand by and do nothing. Not when he could be the hero, with an indiscriminate shock. He had beaten them, tied them to a streetlight and left them with a note for the police. He'd even got a kiss on the cheek from the cutie who told him she definitely wanted that coffee now. Everything was looking great from that day, and he had gone to school today with a spring in his step, waiting for the end of the day so he could go home and get changed to go out on his date. He was on his way home and over the moon. Right up until the moment something flying above him swooped from the sky, threw him into an alleyway and stabbed him through both shoulders, so hard that they buried the sharp objects into the wall behind him. Now he was stuck. Now he was hurting, and terrified, and it hurt to try to begin to summon his quirk, and he wished he was at home and safe in his room playing Texas Smash, or back at school, or in the cafe with the new girl eating mochi. He was scared for his life, and he shouldn't have been. After all, those were red feathers which had been stabbed through his shoulders, which were covered in his blood. He knew exactly who those belonged to. Why? Denki moaned, staring up at his assailant, unmoving and unresponsive as he stared dully at him. Denki had never met him in person, but he had seen his assailant more than enough times on TV interviews or in the news bulletins he had started watching to try and improve his awareness of the world. He had to fix his grade somehow. Hawks definitely wasn't ever this cold, never showed this little emotion, and the eyes which were so full of fun on TV were absolutely dead to the world as the number 2 hero stood in front of him. It was almost like Hawks wasn't there. Why have, Burke, you done this? Remarkable, isn't it? What you can do if you really put your mind to it. Denki squinted at the sound of the new voice, his vision beginning to blur as the pain got to him, and didn't recognize the woman with violet hair and huge bags under her eyes who had strode down the alleyway to stand behind the wing hero, stroking his red wings. Who are you? Oh, my dear boy, my name doesn't matter. Hawks hadn't even flinched as she raised a hand to caress his cheek. I'm just the one they ask to deal with the troublemakers like you. Trouble? Gah. Denki was feeling dizzy, and he hadn't even gone over his limit. I didn't do anything wrong. I think we both know that's a lie, don't you? The woman looked him up and down. You failed to get into UA, Denki Kaminari. You failed to get into Shiketsu. You aren't a hero, not even one in training, and yet you think you can hand out vigilante justice to whoever you like. Hey. Denki clenched a fist, electricity finally crackling in his left hand in anger at her words. I was only trying to help my friend's and yet it wasn't your place to, was it? The woman looked down at the lightning in his palm and tooted. And now you're trying to use your quirk on both me and dear young Hawks over here, aren't you? We can't have that. Huh? Denki had felt something in the air in the way that she said the last sentence, and almost immediately Hawks responded, one wing rising and curling lazily to shoot a feather straight through his palm, stopping his building charge in an instant. Ha! Foolish boy. She shook her head, her short indigo hair seeming to bounce for a second. Back in the old days, of course, they would slap you on the wrist and tell you not to go it again. And of course, you wouldn't listen, going back to it time after time, enjoying the kick you got from the fight or the attention you got after. I'd let you go, and you'd keep doing this until you got someone hurt, or killed, until you failed someone because you didn't really know what you were doing and couldn't get carried by your instincts. And that's going to be it for today. Remember, if you enjoyed, to like, comment, share and subscribe, and see you all next time.